Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm John Gripe. Today we have something for you that's out of this world. America's space program has once again captured the minds and imaginations of millions who are wondering what lies outside of our planet. From the inception of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and the birth of the space race in the late 1950s, America has been at the forefront of space exploration. According to a Pew Research study, almost 2/3 of our population say it's a good investment to fund a space shuttle program. And recent discoveries have people regaining their excitement for the cosmos. On September 28th, NASA announced the discovery of water in the form of a liquid on the cold, rocky surface of Mars. And with films such as The Martian, which came out in theaters the weekend following NASA's announcement depicting humans reaching the surface of the red planet, it's no surprise that Americans believe we are closer than ever to turning science fiction into reality. More than 3 in 5 Americans believe we will someday have human astronauts land on Mars, and over half think we can send ordinary people by 2050. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which was featured prominently in the film The Martian, had its annual open house on October 11th and 12th. For one weekend, JPL opens up their doors to the public with displays, films, and activities in order to show how we continue our research on deep space. And this open house was more crowded by far than what the lab has experienced in recent years. Over 45,000 space fans showed up to the open house, which hit max capacity on both days. In fact, JPL had to cut off entry just 3 hours into the event on Saturday. Those who showed up on Sunday say they knew they had to come early if they wanted to make it inside.
Yeah, yesterday my friends came here, they told me it's very crowded. So actually this morning, because I came from Orange County, so I got out at 6 o'clock in the morning, then all the traffic started.
Came on behalf of my boyfriend, actually, who's obsessed with everything NASA, JPL, all that, especially with Interstellar coming out, and we just watched The Martian, so here for him, but yeah, it's been fun.
So we heard we had to get here pretty early to get a parking spot, so we figured if we're going to have to wait before we get into the facility, might as well fill that with something to do.
These JPL fans arrived 2 hours before the place opened, so they decided to tailgate before the big event.
Go Rovers! Let's go! Beat Tech! Yeah!
As one would expect, one of the most popular sites to visit at the open house was JPL's display regarding Mars exploration. Employees showed guests different types of vehicles and systems that are used, and they say all of this is giving us an inside look on what elements make up planets such as Mars and how they are formed.
Well, I think people love the idea of trying to figure out astronomy. People are really interested in trying to figure out if there are planets around other stars. And the real question is there life on those planets? We have no measurements that prove that there is life or is not life on any planets. And we certainly don't know what the atmospheres are like, if they could be a planet that you could have life on.
This is going to be the first mission ever to dig inside of Mars. They've had Mars landers and rovers, so they know what the rocks are like on the surface, but that'll give us clues as to what is below the surface on Mars, and then we compare that to, does that look like the Earth, does that look like the moons, or is it something totally different, in which case, how did things get to where they are today?
This is the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. This is a spacecraft that's been going around Mars for the last 10 years. We have the large camera, the high-rise camera on the spacecraft, and it can take the very high-resolution pictures. So I look at sand dunes and lava flows, things that look like they might be river channels.
There's water on Mars. It's very salty. It's a brine. But, here on Earth, anywhere, even if we have salty water, we have life. So we can only imagine that there very much could be a very similar thing on Mars.
Now that the announcements have been made and the open house is over and the space dust has settled, we have to ask, what's next? Where do we go from here in order to get humans to outer space? And what are we doing with our technology to search for extraterrestrial life outside of Earth? At Cal State Northridge, there are both professors and students who are working to answer these questions. They have joined On Point's Andrew Pitters to discuss the search for life in space.
Thanks, John. And my guests here today are Vlad Arutyunov, who is a mechanical engineer for JPL right now, and Dr. Rachel Mackelprang, who is a professor here at CSUN. Dr. Mackelprang, I'd like to start with you. What's some of the work you're doing with this grant you just got from NASA? Could you describe that to us a little bit?
Sure. Well, in a nutshell, NASA is interested in the evolution, origins, and diversity of potential life on other planets. And it's really difficult to study life on other planets or extraterrestrial bodies because, well, first of all, we don't know whether it exists, and sampling is an issue. So what my lab has done is we've turned to places on Earth that mimic or are analogs to places that you might find in the rest of the solar system. And so my group studies permafrost, which is permanently frozen ground in the Arctic, and that can act as an analog for Mars. Mars has permafrost. The ground has been permanently frozen for a very long time. And so we study how microbial life survives over geologic time in Earth's permafrost. And the hope is that that can give us some clues as to how life might survive in similar environments on Mars and other extraterrestrial bodies.
Oh, okay. How did you get involved with NASA? Did they come to you? Did you bring this idea to them?
No, so I've been working on the permafrost in a different context for a while, and we started thinking about it as a potential analog for Mars. And NASA every year has what they call, or they have a program where they put out an advertisement saying that we're going to be funding this general broad area of research, and they invite proposals. And so we wrote a proposal that outlined the things that we wanted to do that addressed their interest, and they chose our proposal to fund.
Oh, wow, fantastic. Well, congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you.
I think one thing that people are curious about is why is this research so important? Why do people want to know about possible life in these sub-zero conditions in outer space?
I think that in one sense it captures one's imagination. You know, people think of life in outer space as science fiction, and especially with new revelations about water on liquid water on Mars, it's becoming more of a possibility that we are going to see some type of evidence for life elsewhere. Also, from my perspective as a biologist, it should provide some extremely interesting information about the origins of life, how life evolves, what types of things are common between, say, Earth life and life elsewhere, what types of things are different. So there are a lot of reasons that people are interested in these types of questions.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned the permafrost. Are you guys traveling to these places to get samples, or are they coming into you? How does that work?
So and I should mention this right now, my primary collaborators are with the U.S. Geological Survey, in particular Mark Waldrop, who I work with very closely. And together with Mark, we plan and take care of sampling, which currently our sampling locations are in Alaska.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Vlad, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. What do you do at JPL exactly?
So first, I'm a mechanical engineering intern for the robotics section at JPL. So I've worked on a couple of different projects in the past, but the lab I work in specifically deals with gripping technologies. So just as Professor Mackelprang was saying, there's all sorts of places on Mars and on other bodies that we'd like to explore, but one of the main problems is mobility. So this gripping technology lab that I work in, we focus on gripping onto rock surfaces for planetary exploration, asteroid exploration, and we also do other work to try to grip to smooth surfaces such as the outsides of spacecraft or solar panels on the ISS and things like that.
See, what kind of information are we trying to find out from these samples that we're trying to get a hold of?
Well, I guess that's more of a scientific question, but what I do know from some of the people I work with is that there's lots of new and interesting science that we have never had access to with the rovers, such as those on sloped faces. And so if we develop limbed climbing robots that can actually crawl around on these surfaces, we'll be able to access different geometries on Mars or other bodies where we haven't had the chance to look at before.
I see. Could you tell me a little bit about what JPL is working on currently as their next mission?
So next, I guess, is a relative term. We've got a few things lined up. So 2016 InSight, if I recall correctly, is a Mars lander. There's a 2020 rover, which will be a Curiosity-like scale kind of rover. And there's also the Asteroid Redirect mission, which is not related to exobiology, but is also spearheaded by JPL.
What is the redirection?
Asteroid Redirect mission is a mission to demonstrate the capability of redirecting an asteroid from somewhere in the solar system to slightly deviate its path, to test if we can do that, if the need should arise. And also to test out a bunch of different technologies that we'll need to make sure we've mastered to be able to send humans to Mars.
And how far in advance does JPL plan these kind of projects? Is it decades? Is it a few years?
Well, it depends on the complexity of the mission, but typically a concept at its lowest level of maturity can be anywhere from a few years to 2 decades, or 3 even.
Oh, wow. So this stuff comes up pretty far in advance, has to go through all the planning stages.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next thing I'd like us to do is we did a few interviews over at JPL in the California Science Center, and we talked to some scientists and some people who were at JPL's open house recently, and we talked to them about how they felt about life off of Earth, there already being biological life on other planets and things like that. Let's take a look at that right now.
The most interesting thing to me that we've discovered in the last, decade or so is that there are a bunch of places in the solar system that might have habitable environments. There's, oceans under the surface of Europa.
So for life, you might be able to find microbial life living in the caves where you're protected from radiation, extreme fluctuations in temperature, other hazardous things to life.
Fermi paradox, they got to exist. It's very unlikely they don't.
Well, I believe there are absolutely aliens out there outside of our Earth, but we may never contact with them because it's so far away.
And Rachel, I'd like to start with you. You talked a little bit about kind of the comparison to Earth. Is studying a frozen habitat kind of comparative to early life on Earth? So we're looking at kind of the evolution and seeing how life could progress on other planets also?
Yes, actually. So one of the reasons that NASA is also interested in the permafrost, besides being analogous to environments on other extraterrestrial bodies, is that there have been periods of time in Earth's history where Earth has gone through what's called the snowball Earth. And in the snowball Earth hypothesis, as recently as approximately 650 million years ago, the Earth was, as the name suggests, frozen over. And so by looking at how microbial life survives in permafrost over, again, geologic time, we can get an idea about how it might have survived in much earlier Earth environments.
I see. And Vlad, do you know of anything JPL is trying to do to get to farther space, to try and reach out to maybe more of these frozen planets that might have life? Are we discovering new planets?
So actually, a few people in the robotics section and in the spacecraft mechanical engineering section are working on different proposals to explore icy bodies. That's currently underway right now.
Are they sending rovers or telescopes, or is there anything specific?
I think there's a variety of options, but one of the ones I'm aware of, which actually has been field tested in an Earth version, is an under ice rover. So it's a rover that instead of where the ground is the ground, the undersheet of ice is the ground, and it's buoyant. So it could find a way to get under the ice. That's another question, and will rove underneath the ground. Underneath the ice sheet as if the ice were the ground.
Is that a drilling mechanism? How would it accomplish something like that from an engineering standpoint?
Well, I can't speculate on that, but the reason that they want to go there is because many scientists have said, as I recall, that there's a lot of interesting science right at the boundary between the ice sheet and the liquid ocean underneath.
I see. And that would be, Rachel, kind of like your optimal place to look for life, I'm assuming?
That would be one of the places that we would look.
Are there any other factors to searching for life off of Earth other than we're searching for biological life in these cold zones? Is there anything that we know as far as things surviving on planets with more habitable atmospheres? Do either of you know anything?
In terms of other things that need to be considered, one of the big issues right now is the worry that we might contaminate Mars or these other environments with Earth microbes. One thing that we've learned about Earth microorganisms is they're extremely resilient. So even in the NASA clean rooms, you have microorganisms that are surviving the harshest decontamination protocols. So as far as I'm aware, at least for right now, all of the rovers and exploratory equipment that they're sending to Mars is staying away from the liquid water because we don't want to contaminate that with microorganisms that have been brought from Earth.
I see. This is just a question I'm a little bit interested in is the atmosphere on Mars, I understand, is significantly less than Earth. Does that affect biological life in some way as far as its development?
Well, there are a lot of things about the atmosphere that can impact life. And of course, one of the biggest issues is what the composition of the atmosphere is. So, you know, our atmosphere, you've got oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide. And on Mars, the atmosphere is going to be substantially different. And so the types of life that can exist would have to adapt to those conditions.
Is there anything on Earth that could be comparable to something like that as far as an organism that lives within those parameters?
Well, so almost anywhere that we've found liquid water, we've found life. We've found life in some of the deepest mines. What is interesting, though, is people are building Martian chambers that simulate the Martian environment, and so they are accounting for the atmosphere, so the concentration or the different types of gases that are there, for the atmospheric pressure, for the temperatures. So they're trying to build these environments within labs that simulate Martian environments, and they are finding that microorganisms are able to survive and grow in those environments.
So would you say, maybe just as an opinion, would you say the chances of life existing on Mars or surviving on Mars is possible?
It is absolutely possible that it could survive on Mars. The question is whether or not it, or at least for me, whether or not it arose in the first place. And that I don't know.
Okay. I also interviewed the same people a little bit about future exploration by humans on Mars. So let's take a quick look at those interviews also.
So NASA is interested in sending astronauts to Mars in probably the 2030s. We need to perfect many technologies before we do that.
People here at JPL are formulating plans, and I just heard one a couple weeks ago of how to get there within the amount of money that we have available and within the amount of time that we have available.
So I know there's a couple missions. There's one for sure overseas that's in development right now, and so it'll be interesting to see how far it develops.
There's a lot of stuff we have to learn before we can send humans to other planets or live on the moon or stuff like that. But, you know, we get closer and closer, all the technological advances stack up.
So Vlad, I'd like to start with you. You work at JPL also, obviously. Do you know anything about plans to send human life to Mars? Is that in talks right now? Is that in the very early stages still?
So I think one of the gentlemen just mentioned that he attended a talk that was JPL's plan, the system architecture to send people to Mars, and I think I attended the same one. So there are different proposals in the works. I don't know for a fact myself if one of them has been selected or is close, but NASA is seriously putting forth work hours to answer that question.
So this is something we're really pursuing over even at JPL right now?
People are definitely taking it, I think, more seriously than they used to. That's my opinion. And a lot of the technologies that JPL works on span the whole mission. So they do entry, descent, and landing for something like that. They do some of the work related to the astronaut tools. So JPL has their hands in a lot of the different areas for that kind of mission.
I know a lot of scientists mention that we're a little bit behind in the technology and we still have to learn things. Do you know specifically what kind of technology we're still working on that we need to kind of perfect before we can even think about sending a human up there?
Well, my knowledge related to human spaceflight is very limited. It's definitely not something I'm qualified to talk about, but there are a whole plethora of things that can go wrong from launch to return, and there's a lot of technologies related to the duration of that flight for a human and the duration of that flight for a spacecraft that haven't been done yet by humankind. And so what the asteroid redirect missions, one of the express purposes of that mission is to develop the technologies that will enable a 2030s human mission.
I see, that's interesting. And as far as humans surviving on Mars, Rachel, how feasible is that as far as the temperature and all that right now?
So as long as NASA can create environments that have hospitable temperatures and other, a hospitable atmosphere and other conditions for human life, I don't see why humans couldn't be on Mars. The question is, how developed are NASA's capabilities for creating those environments?
I see. And Vlad, you wouldn't know anything about as far as what they're trying to do. Have they sent anything to Mars to prepare already? Maybe equipment or anything like that?
As far as I know, there's not been any pre-supply missions, if that's what you mean. But I guess a way to think of it that helps me is the rovers are our presence there right now. They're kind of our flagship Mars mission, and they're gaining a lot of data for us that'll help us for those human missions.
I'm not sure if either of you are familiar with the movie The Martian that just came out. Have you seen that at all?
Yes, I have.
How did you feel about that, about all the technology? You obviously are a little closer to most people than it. Was it really that feasible? Was it really scientific?
There's been water cooler talk about what's been accurate and what's been not accurate. There's a lot to consider. I think that the movie probably left out some things that the book may have left in that may be higher fidelity, but I haven't read the book, so I can't really speak to that. But it was certainly a real thrill, personally, to see a serious attempt made to try to create a scenario where a person actually has to tackle these challenges and not just whip it up from somewhere obscurely in the plot, where actually the plot was figuring it out instead of just magically solving it. I think the public really needed to see that.
And I know JPL had a big role in that movie. Is that something the company was proud of in general, being a part of?
Well, me personally, and I think a few of my friends at NASA can definitely say we're proud to have the public think that highly of us, and I hope that's a trend that continues. But NASA did not necessarily collaborate on The Martian, but we did, I think, provide a lot of support. I think Jessica Chastain and Matt Damon both on different days came to JPL to learn more about how JPL works.
I see. Just real quick, couple seconds. If you could go to Mars, would you? I'll start with you, Rachel.
No.
No? So why wouldn't you go to Mars?
I think it would be incredibly fascinating and interesting, but the long-term duration of the trip would be a little bit difficult, and I have a young daughter, so I wouldn't be willing to leave her for a mission to Mars.
Understandable. Glad.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Given the opportunity, you would go up.
Last year I was on a zero gravity test flight, and that was like my first taste of what that might be like, and I've ever since just have definitely been fascinated about and fantasizing about going to space.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you both so much for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
We taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you get stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise and be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
That does it for our show today. Thank you to our guests for being here. JPL intern Vladimir Arutyunov wants to be sure our audience understands his opinions are his own and don't necessarily reflect the views of NASA, JPL, or Caltech. Thank you for watching our show. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CSUN On Point. Look for us Sunday mornings on LA's Channel 36 at 11:30, and you can listen on KCSN 88.5 FM at 5:30 in the morning. From all of us here at On Point, I'm John Gripe, and we'll see you next week.